Welcome back to Retraced Echoes. As always, I'm your host. My name is Bert. I have an extremely exciting episode lined up for you today. You see, it was 2 weeks ago that we did a story on the Lindley Street haunting. Now, that story in and of itself was amazing. Riveting is probably the best way to put it. There are so many little things that happen within the story. There's so many different police records. Unfortunately, there's not a whole lot of first-hand accounts. Now, by that, what I mean is Marcy passed away in 2015. Laura and Jerry, they have also passed on. There's not really anyone that can tell the story of the Lindley Street haunting, which is what I try to do in this episode. If I can ever get someone to do like an interview, much like I did Paul Kenyon, I would love it because it adds detail to the story as well as validation to the story. Now, after I posted that episode, we received a message on TikTok from a man. Now, he claimed that he was the little boy that used to stay over at the house during those hauntings. Now, he's the same little boy that used to pull the covers up to his eyes in that little rollaway cot. He used to pull the covers down and used to see all the eyes looking at him from across the room. After some back and forth, because if you remember in the podcast that I provided, I did not provide his name. I said that he was still dealing with demonic possession. I had heard that from multiple sources also. And I didn't want to bring anything to him that would complicate his own life. I try to protect anyone that's still in the realm that may not want their story out or might not want that kind of publicity. But the gentleman that I talked to, after some back and forth, he decided that he wanted to share his story. He wanted to right some wrongs that has been told about the property and some of the little nuanced things that's out in the public. And he agreed to share his story with our podcast. Now, we are thrilled to bring you this interview, but I've got to warn you. This episode is probably not one that you want to listen to around your children. Now, while I strive to cover the story without delving too deep into some of the adult themes, some parts may still be a little unsettling for younger listeners. I would probably let the youngins set this one out. Now, interestingly enough, for those of you that's going to continue on this journey with me, I had a very interesting situation happen that I never thought would ever happen on Retraced Echoes. For those of you that listen, it's probably not going to be a big deal. It's going to be business as usual. But for those of you that watch this episode on YouTube, all I can do is apologize. About halfway through, we lost a pretty significant portion of the video. Can't tell you why. There's no rhyme or reason. In fact, the audio itself has its fair share of glitches, which I think I've somewhat compensated for the best that I could anyway. Now, these technical issues, they're very reminiscent of an episode that I did on deceptive reality with my co-host Nick. We covered a story called Jeff the Talking Mongoose, and we deemed that episode a cursed episode, much like I'm going to do on this episode with Retraced Echoes. This thing has been an absolute nightmare. Audio was coming out glitched. There would be little noise interference that we did not hear in the monitors when I was doing the interview. Now, I think I've got most of those out. If you still hear something that's a little glitchy, all I can do is apologize. I don't know how to fix that any better. Now, some people will say, well, you're covering demons or the supernatural, and that's what happened. I'm not saying that. But I do find it very interesting that we do an episode on Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which is a disaster. That recording started and stopped probably 7 times. I lost my co-host at least 4 or 5 times that episode. We had to stop, bring him back, restart over again. It was a complete nightmare. The same thing happened on this episode. Now, that episode was like 6 months ago. And I just recorded this episode last week. So when you're watching and listening to this, we recorded this last week. I'm rushing to get this done. It's still not done. When I'm recording this, I'm only hoping and praying I'm done by Wednesday. But on this episode, everything went to heck in one segment. And from then on, it was a complete nightmare. I think we got I think like 50 minutes in. But interesting enough, when we talk about Sam the Talking Cat, it's finito. It was done. So we had to keep starting, or should I say stopping and starting back over. And it was a nightmare. And piecing it together is also a nightmare. But again, I'm not saying it's demons or spirits or anything like that. Some will say it's not wanting a story out. Maybe so. But I do find it odd that with all the complications we had with Jeff the Talking Mongoose, which was a talking animal, and now we're talking about Sam the Talking Cat, we also had a series of problems. Who knows? But without further ado, here's the interview with a man whose childhood was marked by one of the most infamous hauntings. Listen closely and let's keep an open mind. Before we even get the ball rolling, Joe, I want to thank you so much for being here. I know you could tell your story anywhere and you decide to do it with us, so I'm definitely appreciative. I know that the Lindley Street haunting in and of itself has absolutely fascinated me from the very moment I started researching to when I released the actual footage. Now, though your story intertwines with Marcia, with Laura, and with Jerry, your story has a very, what's the word I'm looking for? A very different turn. But before we get too deep into that turn, I kind of want for my listeners to understand, who was Little Joey? What was Little Joey's story?
Little Joey was a kid that saw a lot before I even got to Laura and Jerry. You know, they used the term dysfunctional family. My parents were kind of pushed together. To sum it up without getting into too much detail, it lasted 5 years, and it wasn't a good 5 years from what I remember as that little boy. Saw a lot of things that shouldn't be seen by a child between parents. And so it wasn't good. And either one of my parents weren't fit to be parents. Some people just shouldn't be, but things happen. And the ones that don't want to be parents, they continue trying to live a life that you don't have a child when you do. And that's not good for any child. And it wasn't good for me. When they separated, we were living in Milford, Connecticut. I remember my last memories. And when they split up, my mother kind of bounced around with me for a while. And she ended up getting an apartment on Federal Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I happened to have been born in Bridgeport at St. Vincent's Hospital in 1966. So it's kind of ironic. Federal Street's around the corner from St. Vincent Hospital. And basically Laura and Jerry's is not too far from St. Vincent's Hospital. It's just kind of, I find that kind of ironic, if I could use a term. But she settled on this apartment in Federal Street and hooked up with a bikie gang that was notorious back then in Bridgeport. I hadn't mentioned their name on the last podcast, but they were called the Pagans, and they had a chapter in Bridgeport at the time. And my mother kind of hooked up with the leader of that gang, and they moved into our place on Federal Street. But my mother had first brought me over to Laura and Jerry's sometime in the middle of 1972. And when the door opened and Laura saw me, she had a smile on her face and asked me if you don't remember me, because I kind of shrunk back. I didn't remember her, but she remembered me. So, but I could see she had a warm smile, and my mother told me that she was going to be watching me, and she took off and kind of left me there. And it started out where she would pick me up. But as time went on, she started leaving me there longer and longer, kind of dumping me on the Goodens. The first time, hour and a half in that house, Laura looked me up and down, and I had very dirty clothes on, clothes that didn't fit. I had lice in my hair, and so she got me in a tub. I think I was maybe there less than 2 hours. And she filled the tub up with bubble bath and said, "I'll be right back." As soon as she left out of the bathroom, the door slammed shut, and I got dunked under the water. And I was trying to get up and kicking, and I was being held down by my head, and I passed out. And the next thing I know, I woke up on the side of the tub, and Laura said that I fell and hit my head. She thought I got up out of the tub and slammed the door and slipped and fell and hit my head, but that's not what happened. And later on, with what happens in that house goes to show that that didn't happen the way she thought it did. You know, the adults were fooled a lot in the beginning.
Now, activity was already going on at this point, correct? At least in the house, not necessarily at a heavy level, but my understanding is activity started like 68 or 69, I believe, and then it fell through all the way to 72 was the year that I think they really kind of started getting a little bit of activity. So there was already some activity that was occurring, correct?
Right. In the beginning, it was just small stuff like keys and or just items missing out of the bathroom. You know, it wasn't nothing. It was more along the lines of probably, I'm assuming the way they were thinking it was misplaced or knocked off, or maybe Joey or maybe Marcy took it. But, you know, if you're talking about before I was there, these were the little things that were going on that as an adult would be thinking in their head probably is misplaced, or, you know, it wasn't nothing. We weren't at the point where big things were happening yet. It wasn't until maybe I was there for a couple of months when I noticed things that I knew weren't right, that shouldn't be happening, you know. And I know me and Marcy knew more than they knew, even though we didn't really know. All Marcy knew was these things were her friends. They were, you know, they were her friends, and they were all she had. And she welcomed them in and had me welcome them in. And when we both did that, it ended up into a lifetime. It didn't end there.
Now, out of curiosity, did she ever talk about what caused these things for her to kind of come in and to where she made her friendship with them? Did she ever mention any of that, or was that kind of not spoke of?
In the beginning, even a couple of phenomenon, one of the biggest things was I came out of the kitchen. The first big thing that I saw physically was Marcy called me to her bedroom and said she had all these stuffed animals on the floor, spread out. She jumped on her bed, raised her arms up, and every one of them hit the ceiling and like stayed there, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 seconds till she dropped her arms, and they all rained down on the carpet. And she says, "See, I can do magic." And I said, "No, you can't." I said, "Yeah, you didn't do it." And she jumped off the bed. She was about 6 feet away from the door, and the door just slammed shut she wasn't nowhere near it. It slammed shut, and I heard her scream on the other side of the door, and it was in another voice. It was one of them. And she said, "Yes, I did." I mean, it was a growling. It was not her voice that yelled that through the door to me. And I just backed away. But that was the first big thing that I saw.
So for her, there was never a point in time where she said where they came to be with her, where the initial first time for her was. You saw the events, but she never really spoke about where they came from.
She referred to them as her friends.
Gotcha.
And a couple of times she referred to them as her family, her real family. You know, a lot of times Laura, when Marcy did something she wasn't supposed to do, like go down to the cellar, she would use her full name, Marcia Goodin. I told you. But in the same token, she would, when she was giving Marcy attention, she would say, "What's my little Marcia Goodin doing?" I realized later why she was doing that, because they gave her their name. She did not have their name before they adopted her. And so Laura would often do that, reminding her and I realize this now. This is a grown man, but I was listening to it when I'm a child, couldn't decipher it, couldn't figure out why, other than, you're in trouble when she would say it in the other manner. There was genuine love there, but it was a smothering love where she would start to reject a lot of Laura's affections, because it's just like, let me put it to you this way. If you got this cute cat and you're holding it and you're petting it, it's burnt, but sooner or later, the cat is going to want to jump off your lap and go do things and explore. And you want to keep trying to hold on to that cat, but you don't want to let go. It's not because you're being mean. It's out of love, but it's the wrong directed love. A lot of this stuff we don't figure out until, we're 60 years old. It was smothering to her. She didn't have any friends. She was out of school. There was no resets. There was no going out and to the cafeteria and eating your lunch with the rest of the girls. And, she ate her lunch with me when I was there, and that was it. And basically she'd be in her room and I'd be in the living room. There was not too much activity, put it that way.
Now, I know the research that I did when I was looking up the time that she was adopted, obviously they had her brought into the school, and one of the conversations was that Laura would walk her to school every single day and be ready to pick her up as the day would end and bring her back home. And it got to the point to where I believe that she was injured in the school, and then Laura, she took her completely out of the school. She didn't want her in the school anymore. Is that true, or was that?
Yeah, no, that's true. That happened, and Laura homeschooled her. I wasn't enrolled in school. Okay, I got to stop her because people are going to be saying, "Why? How come this kid wasn't in school?" Well, there's a reason I wasn't in school. One was my mother was unfit. Okay, I'm sorry to say that, but she did not have the ability or the want to enroll me in school and have to drop a child off and make a lunch and pick a child up. And so she kept me out of school. When I was at Laura's, Laura knew that my mother, she told my mother he needs to be enrolled in school, because you can be in trouble for not enrolling a child when a child is supposed to be. Back in those days, during the afternoon or early morning, I wasn't allowed to play in the front of the house, because there was actual truant officers back then that cruised the streets looking for kids that were supposed to be in school. They actually had these. Okay, and Laura knew about it. So during the early daytime hours, if I was outside, I was only allowed in the backyard until the afternoon. Laura kind of knew that she was doing something she shouldn't be doing, which was aiding my mother, by not making my mother be responsible. And what do we call that now when a person does that? There's a new term for that. Enabler. When you don't know that you're doing it, you're gullible. And most people that are, it's because they have a good heart, which both of them did. Very good hearts.
I want to make sure that people understand that, as far as from the standpoint of Marcy, my personal theories, I'm not going to bring into this because I don't want to redirect your point of view, and I don't want to feed into any kind of narratives. I have my own thought process as far as Marcia and what I believe was going on there, in which there's a lot of different stories that happened. There was things that was floating around the house, and this isn't me speculating for anyone that's out there. It's all in the police reports, that kind of stuff.
I was there for a lot of that, and yes, the TV did float. It actually swung like a pendulum more than once. A lot of times the TV would just flip over. You could put it in the stand 3 times, check it, and it boom. Before you even turned around, it was on the floor again. Same thing with chairs in the kitchen. slide away from the table, tip over. Just you just left the room, and now all 4 or 5 chairs are away from the table and all tipped over. Marcia's TV, from her dresser to the bed, even to the floor, and still didn't break. I saw that. Jerry picked it up and put it back on the dresser and plugged it in and turned it on, and it was fine. And that thing took a 5-foot fall to the floor on the screen. So there was a lot going on. But when my mother started leaving me there more and more, I was sleeping on the recliner, one of the recliners. And that recliner hurt me. That recliner, falling asleep sometimes, it would throw you off. It would completely jackknife and squish you inside. A lot of times I just took my blanket and went to finish going to sleep on the floor because it was too much. It was like putting a quarter in one of those Bronco bulls and riding it. That's what basically those recliners did. So Laura's a couple times saw me on the floor and said to Jerry, "You can't sleep on the floor." And they got me a rollaway bed. I don't know who they got it from. I think they got it from a neighbor. It was one of those older ones. It was like built like a tank. You know, you folded it up, but it was wide and it was big. And so they set it up in the living room for me. From the first night that I went to sleep in that bed, I never woke up in the same room again. Yes, it did have wheels, but the thing was wider than most of the door frames. And there would be times that I would open my eyes in the kitchen, all the table and chairs pushed over to one side, and the bed laying the long way like that, and that little boy Joey just sleeping away. And Jerry would walk in and just a look of how. He couldn't get it. He couldn't understand. Well, Laura, come here. Look at this. Joey, how did you get in here? I had no answer. I don't remember any of it. And this got so bad, I woke up in Marcy's room one morning, and she started screaming bloody murder. I wasn't really even allowed in her room without her permission. So she thought that I pushed the bed in there. So that night, when they set the bed in the living room, Jerry put something under each wheel. And I remember him saying to me, he goes, "That ought to hold you, slugger." Like he had all these things jammed under all 4 wheels of this thing, and woke up in the hallway. And wow. He looked back, and all those things that he had placed were still in the perfect spots where in other words, if you had someone tried to drag it, those settings that he put under the tires, one would have been there, one would have been there, they would have been kind of scattered. Everything was still perfectly symmetrical of where he put them under them wheels of that rollaway bed. They were never moved. I still don't know how I moved.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, this was the start of when things really started heating up. I got picked up by my mother, and I got left at my grandmother's, her mother's, for a week. My mother went somewhere or something. So then one of my aunts dropped me back off at Laura's house. And that day is when everything in that house, everything in my life just turned to hell. Laura was doing laundry, and she had a big basket, and she went outside to hang laundry or do whatever, and Marcy was in her bedroom. And as soon as Laura shut the back door, she came screaming out of her bedroom and said, "Joey, come on, do you want candy?" And I saw her open the cellar door. So I got a cold chill. I didn't like the cellar, and the cellar to me was a bad place. So she goes, "Come on." Sam was behind her, and they both went down the stairs. So I get up, and I'm kind of slowly walking towards the cellar door. And I peer down the stairs, and Marcy and Sam are standing side by side at the bottom of the stairs. And she's going, come on, come on. And I shook my head like this. I just had a bad feeling. And she goes, don't you want candy? And I'm thinking, there's no candy in the basement. And all of a sudden, something grabbed me around my waist. And it was like, almost as if I had a tight grip. I was lifted off my feet, carried down the basement stairs. The whole time I was trying to grab at the railing to stop the momentum of me being taken down the cellar stairs. And every time I grabbed the railing, my hand got slapped. I couldn't see what grabbed me. And it let me down at the bottom of the stairs in front of Marcy and Sam. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw like this, it happened real fast. When I got dropped at the bottom of the stairs, like a black mass shot over towards the corner in the darkness of the basement. But I saw it and I realized what just happened to me. And Marcy said, they're my friends. They want to be your friend. Let them be your friend. Let them be your friends. You're going to let them be your friends? Tell them they can be your friends. And I started saying it, okay, you can be my friends. You can be my friends. When that happened, that black mask shot out of the corner. I took a deep breath in and I couldn't exhale. And I felt like it was jamming itself down my throat, almost to the point that I was gagging. I couldn't exhale. I was stuck on that one breath. It seemed like it went on for forever. And all of a sudden, next thing I remember was Marcy going, Joey. And she was in the corner moving these Christmas boxes. And she needed help moving one that had the Christmas tree in it. She was trying to get to these boxes, to a certain box. So she found it. It was a smaller box, and it had the candy canes in it that Laura saved every year to put back on the tree. It had everything, the ornaments in one box, the Christmas tree, this and that. Everything was well organized. So Marcy rips open the box, had just a little piece of tape on top, and had me hold my shirt out like this. And she starts piling candy canes on, maybe 20 of them. And then she goes, come on, and we start running back up the stairs. Sam's behind me, and I'm just glad to get out of the basement. So I go over to the recliner in the living room, and I dump all the candy canes. And she goes, okay, stand in the middle of the living room and hold your arms out like this. So I didn't know what she was doing. She started hanging candy canes all over my shirt, my belt buckles, and then she started dancing around me and singing Jingle Bells. And it was better than what was just happened down in the basement. She was happy, she was singing. So I'm looking straight ahead, and she's singing Jingle Bells, and all of a sudden there's two voices singing Jingle Bells. And I look down, and Sam is dancing around the back of her around me, and there's two voices singing Jingle Bells. Marcy was saying that she taught Sam to talk. In the beginning, when Laura had come back in and everything, and she wasn't really that mad. She was more mad about the mess we made in the basement, moving all the boxes around and stuff. But when Marcy tried to get Sam to do it in front of Laura, he wouldn't do it. And she was really trying to ply him, with the dancing and everything like she was doing with me before Laura walked back in the house. Sam was singing loud, and there was two voices. It was hers and it was Sam's. There's two voices singing together. But he wouldn't do it that day in front of Laura.
Now, for anyone that doesn't know, I know because I know the story. Sam is the cat.
Sam is the talking cat that started off with Jingle Bells, and his vocabulary greatly increased quickly from that point. When this is something, that night, my mother picked me up. And for some reason, it was stuck in my head. I'm sitting in the back seat of the car singing Jingle Bells as my mother's driving down the street. And it was like, I don't know, August. It was August, or it was in the summer. And my mother's like, what are you singing Jingle Bells for? And so we got back to Federal Street that night. And everything was in full swing over there, you know. It was a 24/7 party going on. It wasn't a safe environment for anybody. And about 2:00 in the morning, my bedroom door in the back got kicked in, and I got dragged out by my hair, and I didn't know what was going on. I'm getting dragged down this hallway by my hair by a 300-pound man. And my mother did something to make them mad, so they were doing some acts that they shouldn't have been doing, but they dragged me out to make me watch. And they included me. They included me in on this. And all I remember is it seemed to go on forever. And I was held by my hair and made to watch. Anytime I kept trying to look away or put my head down for shame, you know, they just wouldn't let me. And when it was all over with, all I remember was this big guy picking me up by the seat of my pants and by my hair again, taking me back down the hallway to my bedroom, and just tossed me through the doorway onto my bed like as if I was a bag of rags, and the door slammed. I knew it was them. I mean, I knew it was the demons. I knew it was them because it was way over the line. It was over the line for any human being to do that. It's a memory I've tried to bury most of my life. And it's hard. This is probably the hardest part of the story for me. And believe me, I've cleaned it up a lot for the audience.
Do you need time to?
No. I don't want to lose my train of thought. You know, the next day, my mother brought me back to Laura's. My mother was crying and she was upset, and Laura is saying, Denise, what's wrong? Denise, what's wrong? And my mother said, something bad happened, and she didn't get into details with Laura, but my mother ended up going to the Bridgeport police station that day to report to them what happened to her and what happened to me. And they laughed her right out of the police station. They said, we had so many calls on Federal Street. We went over there, you fought with us, you threw stuff out the windows at us, you know, you called us names. Now you want our help? And they said no. They told her no. They would not let her press charges. You know, it was, I guess, a life lesson. when the police department tells you, I mean, you know, the Bridgeport Police Department never had a great reputation. Bridgeport was a poor town. You know, when I ended up, you know, after everything over there, I ended up in the South End for a good part of my childhood. You know, Bridgeport was an old factory town, and all the factories were shut down for many years, and it just became a big ghetto. there was maybe one or two good spots left in Bridgeport, which was the north end, or you had to head to Trumbull or go in the other direction to Fairfield. But people stopped wanting to live in Bridgeport because gang activity, crime, everything else that goes along with it. When there's no job opportunities in a town that's basically closed down, people turn to other measures. So that's what ended up happening to Bridgeport. Eventually, that's why I left Bridgeport. But when I got back to Laura's that day, I was stiff. I couldn't hear. People were talking to me. This is the next day after this. People were talking to me. Laura was talking to me. I was like I was deaf. I didn't even know what I was after that night. I didn't, what did I do wrong? You got to remember, I'm a little kid. What did I do? Why I did something bad for them to do these things to me. Trying to look for why, but too young to put it all together at the time. So I didn't say anything really for the next couple days. And I think Laura told my mother, you need to have Joey checked out. Something's wrong. You got to remember, she got to know me well in the time that I was there.
There was so much that was obviously going on that I think it would be hard for Laura to have some type of grasp, because she had a little bit of insight, but I don't think, based on what you've said, that necessarily your mom was real forthcoming with a lot of the details. So now I know, based on the conversations that you and I have had off of podcasts, because we've talked a little bit. I told you I didn't want you to divulge too much of the story because I want this to be fresh for me too. So some of this is kind of catching me a little bit off guard. And I'm trying to process. Now, before we get too far into the story, I do want to question, have you went through therapy on any of this? I mean, this is 50 years later. Have you had any kind of therapy or dealt with therapists?
No.
Even to this day?
I've never spoken of this until about a year ago. My next door neighbor, who's a good friend of mine, he's the first actual person that I divulged the story. And this man is he owns a tree company. He's a businessman. He's very smart. But when he drinks beverages, he turns into a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. I wanted to tell somebody my story, and I felt close enough to this person that we not only do we live next door to each other, we eat, we go out together, we've gone on boats together. I mean, we're almost like brothers. And I tried to tell him how his Dr. Jekyll, what a nice guy he is when he's himself, but when he's doing other things, how his whole demeanor and his respect towards life changes. And I said to him, it's like you get a demon in you. And then I looked at him and I said, do you believe in demons? And he said, oh, absolutely. He said, I'm from Kentucky. My mother had some experiences when she was young. I says, well, I want to tell you a little story. And I went on to tell him the story that I'm telling you. And I sat there for about an hour and a half telling him my story. And he just looked at me and he goes, you need to get a hold of Ed and Lorraine. And I'm like, he doesn't even know how they're long gone. And, I'm like, there's nobody left. There's nobody I can tell this to. There's nobody. I'm telling you. I said, this is between us. I said, I just wanted to know if you thought I think I'm a nut or not. And he's like, no, I believe you. So later that day, I get a YouTube video of Seekers of the Supernatural, and my friend with a text from my friend saying, this guy here, Tony Spera, has taken over he's the son-in-law of Ed and Lorraine Warren. And, I got to meet them as a child twice when they came to the house. You need to get a hold of him. So I got his email, told him, what I knew and my story and everything. And that was the jumping off point. But the reason I contacted him was I still had 3 attachments left and I couldn't get rid of them. And I was calling for him to somehow, if he could offer me help, which he did. The whole team, an archbishop from Canada who's renowned, Father Plato. You can look him up. This is what he does. And they got me through, and they got these last 3 out of me. This is only like 8 months ago. But it all came about because of the little conversation that I had with my next door neighbor. This is how this whole thing, and now people are around from Australia to England are talking about me in Lindley Street, and why wasn't it? Because it wasn't brought up in the book because the author wasn't aware of me, is all it comes down to. On the podcast that I was going to do a part 2 to, they had 3 or 4 of my living, 2 of my aunts, my stepfather, who are still in Milford, Connecticut, my aunt who picked me up there several times and went in the house. She was going to go on the podcast as, for my witnesses. And this is someone that I haven't even had contact with in 45 years. I found her on Facebook. So, but it all started from me just telling my story to my next door neighbor. And he goes, "You just got to tell somebody about this." And I'm like, who? It's so long ago. And not only was it so long ago, but, it got its bad press. That's the thing. One of the things that made me want to come forward is because it was called a hoax when I know it wasn't.
Well, even the research that I did, there was a lot. In fact, let's back up a little bit because I want to make sure that we get the full story as far as what you saw from your eyes. I know the story that I researched and what I found, but we've gotten from your story all the way to kind of where the activities was occurring. Now, I know that there was a story, I believe her name was Rose Marie. That was the neighbor's daughter. She would come over and play with Marcia. I do know that much. There was a story where they was both on the couch and they would always sit on the opposite sides of the couch is what the research said. And one day, one side of the couch with Rose Marie actually leaned up and then they fell. And my understanding is that Laura and Jerry had ran in. I believe their parents also ran in and they just said they thought it was the girls. They didn't think that it was anything else.
Okay, well, let me tell you a little bit about with Rose Marie. Okay, Rose Marie was pretty much forced to go over there and play with Marcy. They were not. There's some inaccuracies. Okay, the one day that Rose Marie came over, I was there. She was interacting more with me than she was with Marcy. When my mother picked me up that night, Laura told my mother that she wanted to have play dates with just Marcy and Rose Marie on certain days. Just the girls, not me there interacting also. She wasn't doing that to be mean to me. She was doing that because she wanted Marcy to have a female friend and develop a relationship. Because remember, I said smothering earlier. Not too many people got to get close to Marcy. So Marcy didn't really even know how to interact, and I could tell that it was uncomfortable for Rose Marie to, that's why it was there wasn't much going on. Now, the day that you're talking about, I wasn't there because, again, it was a play day. And after the first one, I wasn't coming around. But their play dates were maybe once or twice a week. It wasn't like an everyday thing, an everyday occurrence. Now, the first thing that Laura and Jerry when they realized that it was more than just things being moved around and pictures falling off walls, was the plates. I was in there one day eating lunch because I lagged on my lunch, and Marcy was done and gone. I was the only one in there, and out of nowhere, everything just seemed like it was a blur. Saucers, coffee cups, big plates, all the drawers opening up, just the silverware flying and falling on the ground. And Laura came running into the kitchen. And as soon as she said, "Joey, come here," as soon as I turned off of the chair, I got hit in the back of the head with a saucer or something. Wasn't nothing major, but I remember as I was trying to run out of that kitchen, there were so many dishes on the floor that my feet were sliding as if I was on ice. It just happened so fast, and that is when the first time I heard Laura say, "I am not going crazy." And she uttered that a few other times too. It was her go-to to deal with what was going on. Jerry had a sense of humor where he said something one night when the bed moved. He said, "They just don't want you in this living room." Because remember, this was occurring every night that I stayed there. The bed was never in the living room. And it was his humorous way, I guess, of, "They just don't want you in this living room." It's not a funny joke, but it's what he said. And I don't know, again, his way of dealing with the bombardment that was about to happen. And it was after that the refrigerator started, and me and Marcy were the first ones to see the refrigerator in the kitchen come. It not only came off the ground, 8 to 10 inches, but it actually came out from the wall, floated out from the wall, floated back gently, and back down to the ground again.
Out of curiosity, did the Marcy believe that she did that, or did it just happen and she was acknowledging it?
No, she found it entertaining. She would smile. I mean, we were in another day, we were in the kitchen eating lunch, and these demons, because they had already showed themselves to us, they try to say that the demons will only come out at night. We were in there in lunch, and there was one in the corner, and he was just going through the wall, coming out on another end, and kind of entertaining Marcy and me. But I mean, going in one end of the wall, going around and coming out like that, and then going back in, sticking half of their body out through the ceiling, and Marcy's laughing away.
So for you, it was just a black mass. It was just a black mass for you, though. Like, could you tell, like, figure? Or was it just simply a black, almost like a shadow? Or how would you describe it?
In the daytime, when they showed themselves in the daytime, it was a black mass that was light. But at night, they pretty much manifested into where you could make out the eyes, you could make out the nose, the details of the face. When they were around me in that living room that night, when they showed themselves to me, and they said, "We've been waiting for you, Joey," that's haunted me for my whole life, that they were waiting for me.
And that's actually how you contacted us. There was a short that I provided talking about you, and again, I didn't refer to you by name or anything like that because I didn't really want that info out, because I understood you were still dealing with this stuff, supposedly, as far as I knew, until that point in time. And I'm like, I don't want that. I don't want anyone to contact you. If you got that kind of stuff going on, I want you to concentrate on that stuff.
Right.
Can you go back? Because what I was talking about in that short was you being in that, what I would assume based on what I researched, that cot, and you would pull those blankets up and you saw those eyes. Can you take us back to that moment, kind of explain that from the beginning?
I tried to look away, and I couldn't. So I pulled the blankets over my eyes, and this is after they said, "We've been waiting for you, Joey." I pulled the blankets over my eyes, and I squinted my eyes as tight as I could. And then I lowered the blanket back down, and I opened my eyes, and they went from being in the background to like right there. And as soon as I looked in the eyes, I got sucked in, and I couldn't look away, and I was paralyzed. And they were talking, and one of them was saying, "Take him, take him, take him now." And I didn't know what they were talking about. I'm still locked in in this demon's eyes, out of the one that was in the front. And the other demon told him, "Not now, not now, not now." I found out later what that was all about. But then he slowly backed away, and it's like he let the gaze go slowly. It was like a 300-pound wrestler that had a hold on you, and you just couldn't get out. I tried to pull out of that glare. I tried to look away. But once I felt trapped. That I couldn't go away. I couldn't pull away until it let me. And when it let me, the last thing I remember was me lowering myself back down as he's letting this trance go. And as my head hit the pillow, I heard, "Good night, Joey. Good night, Joey." It was a demon trying to talk in a gentle, loving voice. And no matter how much they could try to talk in a gentle, loving voice, it doesn't come out that way. Even when they're talking gently to you, when they're in their natural form and they're presenting themselves to you, they struggle with our language, because obviously they do not have the same language we have. It's something we couldn't even repeat. When they go in another person, they use that person's lyrics. When they go in an animal, like they did with Sam, it wasn't a perfect language, but every word was clear. It was how they could do it. And might be hard for a lot of people to understand, but it is what it is. Many people heard Sam speak. It wasn't just me. It wasn't just Marcy. Sam went on to, when the issue that happened with me, with my parents and my mother and the bikie that night, the next day when she had dropped me off back at Laura's and I was there for a couple hours, Sam came over to me and said, "What happened, Joey boy? What happened, Joey boy?" I was in shock. I couldn't hear anything anybody else was saying, but Sam kept coming over to me, repeating that maybe 10, 20 times, and sometimes laughing in between. So he knew what happened to me last night. He knew. And it was never the same voice coming out of him. So I know there was different ones that were going in and just using him as a toy to toy with us. But it got so bad with Sam that he would walk around swearing, saying words I'm not going to say, but some very graphic words, to the point that Laura would pick him up, throw him down in the basement, and shut the door. And you think that would be the end of it, but he would be at the door scratching away and yelling more explicitives, and to be let out, and calling Laura and telling Laura to let him out, let me out, to the point where she turned up the TV to drown him out. This is when everything blew up. This is when Ed and Lorraine Warren first came down. It was in the daytime, their first visit there, and I was there, and Ed and Lorraine came in, and one of the first things after they did their introductions, and there was another lady there that she was supposed to be a psychic or something. A lot of people thought she was, I don't know this woman, and I'm just saying things I've heard, but she did know Ed and Lorraine, and she got them down there. When Ed got there, he was the first one to walk around the house calling out. I think it was a 1 knock for yes and 2 for no. And when he did this, he was going around to each room and doing this. He'd go in the kitchen. And meanwhile, Lorraine Warren would be with Laura and Jerry while Ed was performing this thing that he was doing. And they even made me stay in the living room and Marcy so that Ed could do what he was doing. And he would go out and 1 knock for yes, 2 for no. So he'd go in the kitchen, call these commands out, nothing would happen. He'd then go in like one of the bedrooms. Within 20 seconds, those knocks would come from in the kitchen. After Ed already left. There was nobody in that kitchen. We all heard it. And then Ed would go back in the kitchen. And then he'd say, oh, so you're here. Give me 1 knock for, and whatever. And again, a knock would come from in the bedroom. It was almost as if they were playing a game. But this was enough proof for them to realize that something was going on.
One of the things that I noticed from my research and kind of what I was digging into, I know when Ed and Lorraine first got there, one of the first things they did was some of the interviewing. I know they went to neighbors. I know they went to the family. Now, did they also talk to you when they first got there? Because you was there the first day they were there. Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
But the circus didn't start that first day. And when I say the circus, I mean people that never even really went over their house, neighbors, where all of a sudden they were popular because of what was going on in the house. So now, of course, we'll call them nosy neighbors or whatever, but they all of a sudden became really try to be friendly. But the first time that they came, it was like almost a type of incognito type of thing where they wanted to come and firsthand see something or hear something before they took on the investigation. And they immediately, like I was telling you, the knocking, when Ed would leave one room and go into the bedroom, whether he went into Laura and Jerry's or Marcy's room and started yelling out, the knock would come from the prior room. And so Ed and Lorraine, being experienced in this field, knew right away. Now, the other person that was there was, I don't remember her last name. Her name was Mary, and she was like a psychic medium. She claimed to talk to spirits, and the funny part was my grandmother knew her, and she was over my grandmother's house years later, and but she was there, and they were there, and Ed was alone doing his thing, the beginning of the investigation. So from that point, after Ed was done, they all went in the kitchen. Me and Marcy didn't. They wanted to go talk in the kitchen about what was going on, and came to the conclusion that there's something going on. The house is under possession. And there was a talk about bringing a priest in to bless the house, to bless all of us. And so they were making plans for that next time. Now, between that first visit and their next visit, people were already starting to hear about what was going on. Word leaked out through neighbors and through others, and news media ended up getting a hold of it. And that was a bad thing for Laura and Jerry, because it brought down so many people that wanted to come and see what was going on. it was a swell crowd of over 5,000 at one point. You know, when my aunt came to get me one time, it took her like 45 minutes just to get down the street to come pick me up. And because she wanted to see too. She was 18 years old at the time. And to her, this was all a mess of malarkey. And she wanted to see with her own eyes. But she wanted to come pick me up. She donated herself because she wanted to see with her own eyes. And she got to see when she picked me up. She saw something that caused her to grab me by the arm and went running out of that house and into the car. And oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She's trying to light a cigarette. It's falling out of her mouth. She picks it up, puts it back in, tries to light it, drops the lighter. Her hands were shaking uncontrollably. Now you got to remember, a non-believer, you're talking about somebody that actually really believed that it doesn't exist. They get hit with it. What it did to her to this day, she's a very spiritual person. And it may have done something to her. In fact, I know it did. It's something she'll never forget. It's something, you know, this is an adult we're talking about. It's
right.
A dose of reality that nobody wants. And the memory is, she has said in a mini interview with someone that she still remembers it like it was yesterday. And we're talking 50 years ago. This lady is 70 years old now. She lives in Milford, Connecticut. And I reached out to find her because we lost contact for many years. When this all started up, she was going to be one of the witnesses that, you know, said that she had come pick me up and went in that house and witnessed stuff for herself. So, but it got so bad in a matter of, it seemed like almost overnight. It went from, you know, 100 people to where the point was they were coming from Boston, they were coming from New York. The media outlets from these cities were putting out the story, and people are going, well, it ain't that far, New York to Bridgeport, 40-minute ride. Let's go down there and look. Well, those people weren't the only ones with that idea. And it created so much chaos that you couldn't even go down the street unless you proved you lived there with your vehicle. You know, it was closed off. It was something. It was so many police officers involved that they didn't come in squad cars. They came on a bus of 30, 40 of them at a time. And then they would relieve the ones that were there all day. You know, this was costing the city of Bridgeport a lot of money in overtime for the police officers. And again, Bridgeport, Connecticut was a very poor city back in the 70s. So measures had to be taken. But the night that, I don't remember the priest's name, Ed and Lorraine Warren came with a priest. And as soon as he came in the door, this is when everything, and I know I'm leaving some stuff out, but there's just too much to talk about. So I want to get to what a lot of the main stuff that was going on was when they came with the priest. All the officers in there had already witnessed with their own eyes what happened. When the two police officers saw the refrigerator floating in the kitchen, I was in the living room. As I looked down the hallway at the two police officers, they both backed out of the kitchen with a look of disbelief on their face. And I believe Ed Warren had copies of those police reports that they wrote what they saw. They wrote that they saw that refrigerator, which is probably a 10-year-old model, and this is 74, so that was like a 60-something model, about a 300-pound refrigerator just lift off the ground and float. So, you know, at this point, professionals, and when I say not onlookers, I say professional police officers, gas inspectors from the city, electrical inspectors, structural experts, to try to find what the problem was, because no one's going to jump to it's ghosts. That's the last thing that anybody would even want to talk about. So they brought all these people in, but guess what? Nobody found anything. And these weren't just employees. These were like the supervisors of the structural or the electrical or the gas company. They were professionals that came and couldn't find anything wrong. Now, when Ed and Lorraine came with the priest, he walked in the door, and there was about 6 or 7 police officers that got down on their knees, and one of them said, "Father, we need a blessing before we go home from our shift," because they knew that there was something big going on that they couldn't explain, and they didn't want to bring it home with them. They really knew what was going on, so everybody got on a knee, as like in a football huddle. All these cops, all these big tough cops, they met their match with this. They got down on their knee and asked for a blessing because they were scared. You can be as big and tough as you want, but you can't fight what you can't see. And that's what it comes down to with this. So that night, it was me, Marcy, and I think Rosemary was there. And we were all by the recliners, and Ed and Lorraine and Jerry and Laura were there. And Ed not even thinking, took a pack of lifesavers out of his pocket and flipped one up with his thumb and put it in his mouth. And he went to go put it back in his pocket. But when he looked down, he saw 3 kids looking at him. We saw he had candy. He gave Marcy a piece first. He gave the other girl, Rosemary, a piece. He gave me a piece. And we were happy. We had a piece of candy. Well, it come out later that they said that the Warrens had given us drug candy. And, that hurts. This is another reason why I finally came out, because there was just too many lies told on this. And, and everybody goes, well, I got reports. I got interviews. Well, does that mean they're absolutely accurate? We can't say that, but I know differently. We were not drugged. I was not drugged. Marcy was not drugged. Ed ate the first piece of candy out of there. So how that came about, I don't know. I don't know even how that rumor started. But again, inaccurate. For someone to say that some grown adults that have somewhat respect would poison or give drugs to kids, that's really implying something that's not. It should have never even come out like that, because so untrue. There's a limit between hitting below the belt to disclaim somebody. You can't go around and tear someone down by making up these fabricated things. And I'm hoping I'm getting to set the record straight on some of this stuff, because I was there. My lifesaver was green. Ed's lifesaver was red. I don't remember Marcy's or the other girls, but I remember Ed's and I remember mine. And I'm a witness to that. I was not drugged. So,
well, I know I'm looking through my notes now, because there was a lot to that. That was something that kind of frustrated me too, just because, when things happen, it is what it is. You can say, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in the demon or the demonic realm, or I don't believe that a house is haunted, or people can be haunted, or that entities can take over. But to flat out say that somebody drugged somebody, I have a really tough time with things like that, because there were so many people that saw these events. And I know that according to the notes of what I've gotten, again, research is what research is. It was Father Charbonneau.
That's who it was. Yeah.
And there was supposedly a Paul Eno there also. Now, Paul was apparently, I don't know how often he was there, but apparently the first time he came in with Ed and Lorraine, and he was a seminary student.
I saw a picture a new picture of him. He's still, he put a video out on it a few years ago, and I still recognize him from, even though it's been so many years later. But yeah, that was him. I didn't remember his name though.
Yeah, I know that another thing that, and I'm just reading through notes, I apologize. Not that I'm ignoring anybody here. I'm just making sure that I've got everything correct myself. I know that the police officers, I kind of want to fast forward a little bit, just a small amount. I know that Mike Costello, he was the officer that was in the house. And this is what I would like to consider somewhat the beginning of the end for the Goodin family. Because while he was there was 2 police officers that came to the door, according to my research. And either Laura and, you know what, I can't remember if it was both Laura. I can't remember. Now, just so everyone's aware, we've had a lot of complications during this interview, and I can't tell you exactly why. I think this is like the 9th time we've had to start and restart. Could just be technical difficulties. I'm not one to speculate and say that it is X, Y, and Z, but for whatever reason, we cannot get Joe's video to maintain. It just keeps dropping out, or complications. Now, we did have something very similar happen when we recorded what we very lovingly called the cursed episode of Deceptive Reality, which was the Jeff the Mongoose episode. Maybe it's just talking animals that the world just doesn't, or should I say the spiritual world doesn't like. But either way, going forward, you're going to see me. I probably look different than how you've seen me through the rest of the interview, and that's because I'm recording through a different set of software. And Joe, you will only be able to hear. You won't be able to see it. So I apologize to everyone that's out there, and luckily those that listen to the podcast, it won't affect you at all. But for everyone that watches on the YouTube machine, TikTok, or anything else, that's why this is like that. So I do deeply apologize for that. It's the weirdest things. Like I say, I've only seen it twice since I've been doing this, and both times had talking animals involved. So take from that what you want. But Joe, before we got too far off, we was obviously talking about, you had acknowledged the fact that Father Charbonneau and the other gentleman, which now I've forgotten his name through the process of all this.
Paulino.
Yes. They had actually been to the residence. You acknowledged them. We was going into the part to where I was talking about that there was the officer that was now sitting in the front room. And as he was sitting in the front room, there was a case where the Goodens had gotten up and went to the door. And the officer, unfortunately, this is where I consider kind of the downslide of the story to a degree. When they got up to go to the door, Marcia had started tipping the television, which is one of the things that was a huge paranormal claim, that the TV was moving on. You've even acknowledged that. But now the officer has caught her, quote unquote, faking it. Can you go into a little bit of insight as far as, now you was not there for that, correct? You've only heard about this part?
Right.
What is it that you heard about that part?
That she did it and she admitted to it. But with everything that was going on, with the crowd in front of the house and the constant police presence, and it was too much, and they were looking for a way to end this. You know, this was something that no one foresee as getting to the point that it was going to get to. Nobody could even imagine that, 5,000 people would show up at this little, 800 square foot little bungalow house to see what's going on. And it was just costing the city too much. And so when this happened, when Marcy did this, and she was just trying to keep it going, she was not responsible for all the other things that happened that were witnessed by trained police officers. She was not responsible for the levitating of the refrigerator. She wasn't responsible for the TV getting up and swinging like a pendulum, and it did it in front of a police officer when Marcy was nowhere near that. But that being said, and the superintendent of the Bridgeport Police Department back then, his name was Walsh, and he was getting it from higher up, from the mayor. I found this out later when I investigated myself. The goings on that I didn't understand, because at the time I was a child. When I say that, I mean the adult things that were being discussed and what was going on, how it all became. So they were looking for a way to stop this, to get rid of the crowds, and to end the madness that was going on. So basically they used Marcy. The officer called up the police chief and said, I just caught her trying to tip the TV over. Oh, all right. That's it. It's a wrap. So have a talk with the girl, Marcy. And so this officer, I think he was a sergeant. I don't think he was really no high up brass type, because if I remember, he had like sergeant stripes on his police uniform. And so Marcy goes in the kitchen, and Laura and Jerry are there, and I follow, but I was the last one in. I was standing behind the police officer. He knelt down, like on his knee, and said, we're afraid that people might want to come in here and hurt you. People think that there's a bad thing going on in here. He used some type of psychology. So, we're going to tell everybody that you were just doing magic tricks and you tricked us. Okay. And the way it was presented to Marcy was in a way that she was almost going to be a star. So she went along with it. And, they made it very appetizing to her. But I remember when I looked up, Laura and Jerry were standing behind her in the kitchen chairs, behind the kitchen chair. And they just both had a look of horror on their face, that they couldn't believe that this was happening, when they knew that everybody saw what was really happening. And now this was being put on Marcy. So when I looked up, I really didn't understand then. You get older and you reflect on everything that went on. And I know what that look was now. And that look was of disbelief, that we're going to be abandoned. What is everybody going to think? They're going to say they're going to make up things about us now because of this. You got to remember, adults are not thinking like Marcy was, like, oh, they're going to tell everybody I can do magic. To her, it was a good thing. But to Laura and Jerry, I realized these years later that they were going to have to get looks from certain people about the skepticism because of the way that it ended.
That makes sense. I know that there was an investigation group that came in also, I believe before, that was trying to figure out exactly, and you and I had spoken about this also, they were trying to figure out all the different means within the house, and they almost came off more like a skeptic to begin with. So you had that was kind of happening, and I can't remember who they were brought in by. They were brought in by someone to try to disprove that it was not paranormal. Basically.
Yeah, and I remember who those people are, and they were another one that spreaded false information. And if you do some digging, you'll find out. They tried to say that all that time it was a gas leak, and that we were under a hallucination from breathing in the gas. Yeah, I remember, and they were to discredit more than anything. And that was one of their conclusions that they came up with, when that's completely false, because they had the people from the gas company, the inspectors, come, and there was no gas leak. So again, I'm glad that I can set the record straight on a lot of this.
Well, I know also, I believe after there was the another research foundation that it came in, because at this point, I think let me back up. Before this group came in, that specific group that I'm referring to. I know that one of the things that they talked to Marcy about was everything that was going on, but there was also the conversation about Lorraine potentially burning her wrist underneath the sink, which was a claim that she had made, was that there was something with her wrist. And I'll give my conclusion after you speak on that, but I had a conclusion on that also. Do you want to speak on that at all?
Well, number one, because I didn't see the incident, I don't want to speculate, but I was just wondering myself, because it happened in the bathroom. Was the bathroom door not closed? Would someone go in someone's bathroom and use their sink, and or you go in their bathroom and use their bathroom and not close the door behind them? Because if I remember correctly, it was the bathroom sink.
I believe it was, yeah.
And so myself, my own feeling from, and this is a point of view from somebody that was there, is that I can't say for sure, but I would like to believe that the way Ed and Lorraine performed and what I saw and I felt a lot of concern from them, and that they wanted to help. They were there to help. There was nothing sinister as far as their characters went. In fact, the first time that I met Ed and Lorraine, I was standing next to Laura, and Lorraine looked down and said, "Who's this handsome little boy?" And obviously she was blind because I wasn't that handsome. But and she brushed my cheek, and I felt something. To this day, I'll never forget that. It was a sensation of vibration, of an energy that I couldn't explain at the time. And she looked down at me and she smiled. And, the first thing I thought is, she was an older woman at this time, not that old, maybe in her late 40s or 50. But when she smiled, she was a beautiful woman. And she just kind of made you feel that you were safe. They both made you feel like you were really safe with them there. And, it was a feeling that felt good. I did not understand who they were when I was a kid. I did not know who Ed and Lorraine were. Never heard of them. I was just an 8-year-old boy going through life. But I noticed everyone else seemed to make a pretty big deal about them. So I knew that they were somebody that was important, kind of, in a manner of speaking. That they were there to do a job. And whereas Lorraine was very, assuring and, hugging Laura, and Ed was about the business of getting these things out of here. But they were, to me, they were like a great team together.
Well, I know that my theory is, and trust me, I've taken enough heat from people out there, and you know who you are, and at the end of the day, it doesn't bother me. But the conversation I have is, everyone always says, well, Ed and Lorraine was a bunch of fakers. And I keep going back to the standpoint that nobody knows. It's speculation, whether you believe that they was doing something, whether you believe they wasn't doing anything, whether you believe that it was all completely staged. The one thing that nobody can 100% say, because they're past, they can't defend themselves. But I believe Ed and Lorraine did way more good than any bad that they could have ever done in the paranormal. I'm trying to choose my words very carefully.
Community.
That's probably the best word yet, because families, they invited Ed and Lorraine in because they needed that help.
Right.
And they was typically the one that would pick up, go there, and handle whatever it is. Now, there's been cases, and you guys have brought up plenty of cases in the comments on different platforms, that they left, and this one is no different. My understanding is that Laura and Jerry did ask them to leave. I don't know that to be certain. Joe, do you know what happened with that? I don't know.
Yeah, this is a touchy part of the story, Bert, because and I hate to say this, but the way that this ended, it kind of made Ed and Lorraine look like fools, because they were when they got to Marcy and they got her to admit and say that she was the one doing all these magic tricks and the ventriloquism and all this stuff, and the Goodens went along with it because the conversation didn't end with Marcy. Marcy was the subject of the fall guy, okay, but the way it was told to Laura and Jerry was that, look, if you don't go along with this, we're pulling all the barriers, we're taking all the police out of here. Whatever this crowd does to your house is not our problem anymore. So you're gonna go along with this, or we're gonna leave you. And that's horrible. I mean, that's for you to turn on your own men, and I mean the superintendent of the police department, when these men wrote reports about what they saw in that house, he basically called his own men liars. This is documented. We're not talking about hearsay. We're talking about written. These gentlemen might not no longer be here, but guess what? Their reports are, and they're dated, and they're very descriptive of what they witnessed in that house. So when all this happened like this, Ed and Lorraine, and this is from my point of view, had to walk away just shaking their head. Like, what the heck? We're here to help, and now they completely took the authorities completely took over and ended it, and it was like a quick ending too, because once it was called a hoax, everybody left.
And this is speculation from me. No one said this. This is my speculation. I'm very hard pressed to believe that people can say, well, yeah, there's demonic activity and demonic things that occur, but then all of a sudden they have an issue believing that a demon couldn't potentially cause a young child to say that Lorraine did such a thing. And that to me blows my mind, because with everything, let's use, for example, let's say under some form of demonic control. And I know that you said Marcy was just trying to continue the activity so that there would be activity there. Who's to say that a demon didn't help influence that decision a little bit?
Well, that's funny that you said that, because that's exactly my thoughts on that. As much as the cops wanted to end all the madness, I think the demons that were controlling the house wanted it to end too. They wanted all these people out of here, and so they weren't here to entertain this crowd. They're not here for that. They're here for other reasons, and right. So it was, you might as well say it was the house and the police against us, because before we kind of had the police on our side. They're witnessing the phenomenon that's going on in the house, and now all of a sudden it was Marcy. It was all Marcy. She must have eaten a lot of spinach to be able to lift that refrigerator.
Yeah, she was like 90 pounds or something.
Yes, she was skinny.
That's what the police report said. I don't even think it said 90. I think it said 80, 70 or 80 pounds. It was like the fridge weighed double or triple what that was. So
yeah. But any way that it could be stopped, and people do this in life to other people. Any way they can want to try to tear you down and stop you from doing something is to fabricate something, and have people believe that as the truth.
Oh, for sure. I know that they left. The police ended up packing up, left, and Lorraine packed up and they left. the activity obviously continued. I know that much. And based on the reports that I read, and this was from miscellaneous research spots, they said that, at this point in time, now the family's having a tough time because Jerry was still working, but now everyone was looking at him as though he faked this entire thing, which made his life more difficult.
He actually went on, I found out some years later, I think it was a couple of years after the whole thing happened on Lindley Street, he went on a local radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut called WICC. It was an AM radio station that we used in Bridgeport. And he went on a talk show with a man named Tiny Marco and conducted a whole interview with him. Now, you may be able to pull that up. I think it's still out there somewhere, that interview, but that is the only known interview that he ever gave regarding the house.
Wow. I know they went through a lot of different things too, because I believe the police had to come back because there was, I think, gentlemen that was trying to, at one point in time, they tried to burn the house down or something.
Yeah. And that's when my grandmother called my mother and told my mother, you got to stop bringing Joey over there. And my mother's like, why? And she said, they just arrested 2 guys that were going to try to burn the house down. So, but my mother didn't care. She did keep me a little bit away for a little while, but they arrested the 2 guys that were going to do that. And they were doing that to, in their mind, burn the demons out of the house. They weren't thinking clearly enough about the occupants that were in there. And so it scared them, and it forced the police to put a small skeleton crew of men around there for a while after that, because now you're talking a crime. You're going from a haunting to burning someone's house down. And so the hand was forced for them to bring back some people, some officers, to keep an eye on the house and because people were still coming. There was still looky-loos that were coming down to want to see or take a picture, or, it was one of those things, almost like an attraction.
Well, I know shortly after that also, there was the Duke University preliminary report. It was called the Perplexing Poltergeist, and they kind of gave their assumptions of everything that happened, and it was very interesting to see that report because, again, it almost took what I would call a cynical look at everything. Now, when was the last time that you was around the Goodin family? Because obviously with all this stuff going on, your mom's saying, hey, you can't go anymore. Right. Did it just abruptly stop, or did you go occasionally?
I didn't stay over there nights anymore after that. And my mother found a really nice guy and married him. And he was my stepdad, and he was a really nice guy, worked, gave us a home, let me call him dad, treated me well. And so at this point, we were living in Stratford, Connecticut, in a place called Lordship. And it was really nice. And I was in school full time, and everything was great. About a year after Lindley Street, we were at Famous Pizza in Bridgeport, Connecticut on Park Ave. And we walked in, and my mother kept walking. They walked right past Laura, Jerry, and Marcy, who were sitting at a booth. And I froze and stopped. They kept walking. And Laura looked at me and just hugged me and started kissing me, and Jerry. And so then my mother saw what was going on and saw it was Laura and Jerry. So now it's like a reunion. They pushed tables together and got out of the booth, and we all sat down and were reminiscing over the past year. So they were bringing each other up to date, the adults. And me and Marcy they had 2 tables or 3 tables put together. Me and Marcy were at the end. We were sitting across from each other, and she kept looking at me and smiling and laughing, because we didn't have a great relationship, but she kind of showed that she missed me. So she was wearing a bracelet that was like macrame, and she was telling me that it was an Indian bracelet, and it had these blue beads on it. And she was all showing it to me, and the parents were kind of huddled close to each other, talking about what's been going on with me, what's been going on with them at the house since everything. And I found out a lot of the conversation afterward was that my mother was explaining to Laura and Jerry that they had an exorcism performed on me up at the house because they kept coming up, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting up with my eyes wide open, looking into nothing, and just speaking in an old raspy voice. So they called in a priest who wasn't a priest yet. He was studying, and he came up, and it had to be at 2-3 o'clock in the morning because that's when this happened with me. So this was all arranged. And my mother was telling Laura and Jerry the story that the priest had my stepfather and my mother stand out in the hallway on the second floor of the bedroom. And as soon as the priest walked in, the door slammed behind him. And I guess he was scared, but he tried to go on with what he was doing. And I don't remember any of this. I only know what I was told is that this man had a lifestyle that the demon knew about and called this guy out on it and mentioned names. And this priest got so scared that he turned around to open the door. It wouldn't open. He was pulling, he was banging, he was screaming for my mother and father to open that bedroom door. And it finally opened, and he ran down the stairs screaming, "I can't do nothing for him. I can't do nothing for him." And he went running out of the house. And this is the story that I got from, it wasn't just my stepmother and my father. We had neighbors that lived across the street. Their name was the Cornells, and they had a son my age. It was his mother that found this priest that was studying the priesthood, that she contacted him. So there was a couple people that still knew about what was going on with me, because it was only a year after Lindley Street and all this was starting to happen to me. So, but it didn't work out. There was phenomenon that night that they all witnessed, and it was enough to scare that man was studying for his priesthood. And I heard later that he dropped out. Whatever happened that night when he came to perform the exorcism on me shook him out of the priesthood.
Wow. Now, for you, all of this activity, it never stopped with the Goodins. Did you? Now, it's not like I'm assuming it started as soon as you left the Goodins permanently. I'm assuming it was going on even while you were at the Goodins. Is that correct, or is that incorrect?
No, it's correct. It all really happened from the day that we were in the basement, and I told them that they could be my friends. And from that point on, I've always felt, and this is really hard to explain, Bert. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to wrap their minds around this, but I've always felt like it's not only me looking through my eyes. I feel like I've always felt like there was other eyes looking with my eyes, that presence of them there. And I know this is hard, but I never felt alone, if it makes any sense. They were always there and continually letting me know their presence and that they are there. There was no relief for me with this from Lindley Street to up to 8 months ago. And when they say, if you leave a haunted house, you can run from it. I believe that was the theory with the Amityville Horror. The family went running and left everything in the house. They didn't even go back for their personal belongings. And so, but if they want you and you have accepted them, given them any type of invitation, you're now housing them. And when you do that, it's difficult to get rid of them because you were a little kid, so they intimidated you from that little kid. They've always made you feel like that little kid. Even when I grew up to a man, they still had that fear within me as that little kid. It's almost like I couldn't stop being little Joey, even when I was a grown-up. You know, the first time I beat the first demon was one night. I was living in East Boston, and I had these sliding closet doors, and I had quite a few pairs of sneakers, maybe 4 or 5, and a couple of pair of dress shoes. In Boston, you got to have winter boots. So I had a little arsenal of footwear in my closet. And at the usual time, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, the doors open up violently in the bedroom. So I sit up, I look, all right, they're messing with me. I know what it is. They're messing with me. I lay back down, and within 2 seconds, I am getting hit with every shoe in my closet, every boot, every shoe. And I mean, they were being flung at me really hard enough to make me yell in pain. So I jumped out of bed and I demanded them to come out. I called them some swear words, and sometimes when you're fighting these things, you got to use their own language against them. And it came out. It just manifested out of the closet and locked eyes with me. And I locked eyes back, and I matched his hatred and his anger. And I felt I was pushing back. I felt the more intense and mad I got, the stronger the look was. He wasn't sucking me in like they've been doing my whole life. I was pushing him back, and we were still locked eyes. And when this happened, I saw a sign of worriness in that demon's eyes. That I realized I was doing something right. Whatever you're doing, keep doing what you're doing. And I just got more and more angry. We were locked in eyes. I walked up to within maybe 3 feet of this thing. Granted, 7 feet tall or so. But I looked up and never stopped looking out of his eyes. And the last thing my thought was almost as if I said, I'm going to use my eyes I'm going to push you back. And he disappeared. He just it was something almost like out of the Twilight Zone. The little kid wishes the people into the cornfield. He went away. It was the first demon I beat. It was my first victory. And I was 19 years old at this time. But that was it. Now I knew that I could win, that I could fight. It can be beaten. And I thought about this for so long and continued through the years to beat some more, to the point to where they put a black film over their eyes and didn't suck me in anymore because there's a chance that I could get rid of them. I already got rid of a mess of their friends, and so from that point, I got more cocky. I got more braver. Being scared of them my whole life disappeared and was replaced with fighting anger.
To a degree, that would be a difficult thing to do, but I think once you've been pushed to a certain point to where you just don't want to be pushed anymore, I could see where that could come into play. Now, I know obviously you've dealt with a lot of things in your life dealing with these demons. I'm assuming with any impressionable young 20, 30-year-old, even in the 40s, so much of your life comes and goes in a flash. And for you, you was never set up for success to begin with.
No, but I've tried, and I got to tell you in the audience something, is when I was battling these things throughout my life, I looked for any form of escape, to get away from this reality, which the reality was, that these attachments stayed with me from the age of a young boy. And so to go through that portion of my life and the physical abuse from others, people that are supposed to care about you and love you at every avenue, it was always bad for me. My real life in the physical world, the demons made things more miserable, and of course, great joy is taken from them out of people's misery, because they don't want us to be happy and loving, and they want us filled with other things, things, bad stuff that people shouldn't think about, or people shouldn't wish on other people. And this is their strength, and this is how they won. Now, when I was telling you the story about when I was 19, I was living in this apartment in East Boston. It was on the 3rd floor, and I had it. I just couldn't take it anymore. And, some people would say, well, why would you consider, something that's not good for you to do? And when you're at the point where the dependency things don't work, nothing works, and you just can't escape what you're going through, you just want it to end somehow. So without getting too descriptive, I ended up in a mental hospital when I was 19 years old. It was for a 30-day observation, and it was something that made me see another light of things, as far as they had me there because they were concerned about my well-being. And so it wasn't me doing this on my own. I was forced to go into this, it was called Bridgewater State Hospital in Massachusetts. And so I get in this place, and I am in a Johnny, and I am in a day room with all these people walking around, talking to themselves, laughing, crying. It was a scene out of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It was, I was already in a state of shock. I mean, it was so bad in this hospital, no one was even given a plastic spoon or a fork. Everything was finger food. The 30 days I was there, it was nothing but peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, carton of milk, or an apple or something. There was nothing. They made sure there was nothing so no one in there could hurt themselves. So, but when I got there, and they put me in this big day room, this old black man comes walking over to me. I'm leaning against the wall, just watching all this madness around me. People just completely in another dimension, it seems like. So that out of all this black man starts walking towards me, and he walks over to me, and he looks at me, and he goes, "We always win, Joey. We always win." And he walked away.
If only you could see my face right now.
So
nope.
This wasn't my only interaction with this gentleman. So he walks, after he's made that statement, he walks away, and he's just laughing. He's just laughing. And I'd only been in that room 10 minutes. Nobody knew me. No, I don't even think people knew their own names. So a couple days later, I'm sitting there eating a sandwich, and he comes and sits next to me. When he was in the back of me, I felt his presence. And he comes and he sits down next to me, and he goes, "Don't worry, Joey. I got a couple too."
A couple?
Yeah. He had some attachments in him, and obviously his attachments knew my attachments, because this man knew my name, and then the two interactions that we had were him knowing my name and saying that, we always win. the first one. And the second one, he was telling me, don't worry, Joey, I got a couple too. And
now I get it.
That's all he said. And I knew it as soon as I didn't have to go, what do you mean? I know what he meant, because there's no other way the man could know me or know anything about me. So from that point on, I did the 30 days in this place. And from that point on, I look at mental institutions around the world as a warehouse for people that are under demonic attack, that these psychiatrists and these doctors are not going to use that terminology or go along. But since I've done study and research on this, most of these people who are not acting rational, they've done scans on their brain. They show no abnormalities. They show no synapses that snap off that could cause a person. That is one of the reasons how a person gets dementia. Is I don't know if I'm saying it right. The wiring to our brain, those things snap off and people end up getting dementia. But I'm using that as an example because they've done experiments and they've come to the conclusion that they don't have a conclusion, that these brains are healthy. So why are these people acting like this? Why are these people talking to people that aren't there? Why are they just, some people are in a frozen state of staring into space when all their vitals and everything's working fine? What? Because of what I went through on Lindley Street and what went on, I have to ask myself questions pertaining to this because of that man that said those things to me. So I said, and then he admitted to me, don't worry, Joey, I got a couple too. So my next thing was, well, how many of these other people in here have a couple and they're just being called crazy?
Now, out of curiosity, and maybe you said this and I didn't catch it, who put you in the Institute? Did you do that yourself or did somebody else put you in there?
I tried to unalive myself.
Okay.
And it was a very serious and graphic thing. I was in a regular medical hospital, Boston City Hospital, for 2 days getting blood transfusions, and then from there, I was strapped to a bed in the hospital because, and my legs and my arms, and I was strapped down, and I'm telling them, okay, I'm all right now. All right, you can let me go. Please take these straps off. And they wouldn't. They said, no, we can't. By order of the state, we have to send you to a hospital. And I didn't know that they were going to send me to the notorious Bridgewater State Hospital. And it is notorious, if you ever look it up sometime. I was forced. It wasn't voluntary. I had to do this and be cleared that I was no longer thinking of harming myself. So, which was, you got to admit, if someone is trying to do something to themselves that they shouldn't do, it's not considered rational thinking.
Right. So,
I did the 30 days in there and got out, and everything basically continued with me as far as fighting, sometimes winning, sometimes losing. But most of the time I was losing because of some dependency issues that I had going on. And I just, at times I refused to fight them, or I was too tired to fight, or I was sick and tired of fighting. And I didn't want to fight anymore. And, you can get a person mad enough to fight. But, when you're talking about 50 years of my life, someone's got to get tired on one end or the other. And I believe that's what happened to Marcy. She couldn't endure. If she was going through the same thing I was going through, and I believe that if she had as many demons as I was carrying from there, it was a lot. It's a lot for anybody to go through. I've had people that know my story say, how did you make it? And I don't have an answer for anybody. I guess you could say, a sure will to survive. You either lose your mind and succumb to everything that they can actually do to you, or you continue to fight. And she lost her fight. I almost lost mine a couple times. But for some reason, something has always pulled me out at the last minute. And they say people have a guardian angel, or they say when these demons cross the line, and is when they step in to stop what was, because the night that I was going to unalive myself, I wasn't supposed to make it. Just by some chance, I left my kitchen door open so that somebody could find me. And a person that I barely or hardly ever talked to just decided to come by and witness what was happening. If it wasn't for that person, I don't think I would have made it through that hurdle. But it seemed like every time the worst could happen, at the last minute, something come in to save me. And I have no answer for that.
It's crazy to think that these kind of things occur, but then equally amazing that if there is a dark, I've always heard there is a light. And I believe that's where a lot of times we don't necessarily understand. Sometimes we feel like we're completely alone in this thing, and we're not. It's, even Nick and I, for those of you that don't know, obviously there's another podcast that I produce. I'm a co-host. That's with my buddy Nick. It's called Deceptive Reality. Luckily, we're going to have Joe on there too. It's going to be probably about a month out. We're about a month ahead on that podcast. So when you hear this podcast, about 1 month from now, you're going to hear this on the Deceptive Reality podcast. But a lot of times we talk about how it's easy to make assumptions that things are or are not what they appear to be. And even Nick and I talk about that, and we all have different comfort levels, what we believe is possible and what we believe is not possible. This is one of the few where I think Nick and I both agree that there's something in that realm. What that is, I don't think either one of us will ever know until we get to that side, whatever that side might be.
I've got a slight advantage on a lot of people because this story was never supposed to come to light. They never thought that I would come out with this. I know they didn't. So I really angered them to the point that a lot of other phenomena started back up again aggressively. As soon as I went ahead and did another podcast, the whole week leading up to it was everything and anything that could go wrong just went wrong on a mostly smooth operating thing. I come along like a monkey wrench and thrown in, and just everything got discombobulated. And it kind of same thing happened with our podcast. We have had nothing but problems, audio, video. I always knew that they don't want this told, but they never expected me to. The thing is they know about time travel. The demons use it. Our time doesn't match their time. I want to try to explain this in a way that people can understand. Our time is like a 3-year-old's toy to them. They play with it, they manipulate it, they do what they're going to do, forward and backward. The reason that is because a lot of people that are under possession, they're being programmed for something, and they'll be activated when, almost like a spy, when they're needed to do what they need to do. And a lot of times people will commit these horrific crimes, and people will say to them, what would possess you to do that? And that's funny because that is the answer with the question. What would possess you? Exactly. They can't even tell you why they did what they did. But in the same breath, a lot of us buck them through life. I call it bucking them. When they want you to do something and groom you to do something, but you don't do it, there's punishment from them. But it goes to show that you can buck them. They can do all the programming they want. It's your will. Inside is your fight in this thing with these demons. It's a battle of wills, good and bad. And, you can't make it any more easier for anybody to understand that if you're going to believe in a higher power, then there's that dark side that also goes along with it.
What else do you believe is pertinent to your story that we've not heard about?
I want to show you. I got to unplug myself for a second here. You can see me, right?
I can, yes.
Okay. Can the audience see me?
Unfortunately, no, they can't see you.
I was going to show them. I wanted to show them something. We're going to fast forward from Massachusetts to, 25 years later here in Florida. And they basically have stayed with me. I had 3 last attachments I couldn't get rid of. And I mean, these last 3 that refused to leave, they really, towards the end, just about drove me crazy. You have the video and the audio. That banging is something that would go on 7 nights out of the week. There's no way to block it out. Toilet paper in the ears, everything. It's sometimes to the point that it shakes my whole trailer. And I don't live in a little rinky-dink trailer. I have a double wide. It's with a screened-in porch, and on a 1/4 acre of land. It's a big solid place. So when these bangings start, it could be in one room, like my bedroom. I could be in the living room. I could feel it throughout my whole trailer. The power, or I don't know how to say it. They weren't knocking my walls down, but it was loud enough that it was thunderous, and it was more than one. And, it was a constant boom, 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 boom. For years of my life, they refused to let me sleep at night. And a lot of people would say to me, geez, Joe, you went to bed at 9 o'clock last night. Why are you so tired? But I never told nobody the story at this point, so I couldn't say, well, you don't have somebody banging on your walls all night long from anywhere from 1 o'clock until 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. That's when people get up to go to work, and I haven't even been to sleep yet. But I've been in bed all night, and when you're deprived of sleep, it can make a person miserable, can make a person, not have any type of ambition, because your brain and your body is not getting the rest that it needs. And this went on for a long part of my life, to the point where I had bags under bags under bags under my eyes. And people would be looking at me like, geez, do something about them black bags under your eyes. Again, I never told anybody to this point yet. So, when people would come across with these things, or why are you acting like that, or why are you tired, I could never tell anybody the truth. I had to just say, well, I didn't sleep good last night, or because I didn't want anybody to have an opinion about me that would start to spread, and people would look at me. I didn't want any of that attention, but I was so desperate to get rid of these last 3 demons that I confided in a friend for once out of 50 years. And that friend hunted down the New England Society for Paranormal Research, Tony Sparrow, and got me his information. And me and Tony developed a relationship where he was calling me from Connecticut to Florida, and we were having conversations, and he was taping everything because he said he wanted to document it. And so we probably had maybe 20 hours of documented stuff on this case right here. And so, but the main thing I was calling him for was because I needed help. And Ed and Lorraine, and I explained my connection to with Ed and Lorraine to him, who I was, and what the situation was. And he right away got together with the team. He got a hold of Archbishop Plato in Canada, and everything began to happen to the point where we had an exorcism and we got rid of the last three. And I couldn't believe it. The first night that I laid down in bed, it was the first time in 50 years that I was alone. My mind, my body, everything belonged to me. It felt like I was giving myself back, if that makes any type of sense. After 50 years of torment, it felt good to be myself with my own thoughts. And as soon as that happened, my spirituality became stronger, and it gave me even more strength. But it worked, and we continued on with our relationship. We've since had a parting of ways with no bad feelings. I have nothing but love and respect for the whole team. I'm so thankful for them. I'm thankful for Ed and Lorraine. But I left out something that I think everybody's going to find fascinating. And you're going to have to excuse me, because when I talk about this, I get really emotional, because it was something that I relive. This one thing of everything that's happened to me in my life, from Lindley Street through my whole adult life. And there's been some horrific and terrorizing things. One thing always sticks out in my head and passes through my head every day was in 1981. I was living with my grandmother, had custody of me, and I was living on Prospect Street in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And for some reason, I looked up Ed and Lorraine's phone number on information, and they were listed in Monroe, Connecticut. Their number wasn't unlisted. So I called, and Ed answered the phone, and I hung up. I don't know why. I just hung up. But then I picked up the phone and waited like 1 or 2 more minutes, and I called him back. And he knew it was the same caller. He picks up the phone, hello. And he says, "You're going to talk?" And I said, because I didn't know what to say. I said, "Mr. Warren, I don't know if you remember me. The Goodens used to babysit me." I said, "I was a little boy that was there when you and Lorraine came." And he said, "Joey." He remember, it was 5 or 7 years later, but he remembered me. And so right away, he's like, "Hey, how you doing? Where are you?" And, he's catching up with me as far as, what I've been doing the past couple of years. And I explained to him that I was living with my grandmother. My dad got divorced from his second wife. So my grandmother had custody of me, and I was living on Prospect Street. And then he asked me, he said, "So how you doing?" And I was calling him in Lorraine because I wasn't doing good. 15 years old, I was under full attack from these things. I brought them to my grandmother's. They started possessing people in my grandmother's house. She had a rooming house on Prospect Street, 3 floors. We lived on the first floor. The second and the third floor were all rooms, like 5 rooms that she rented out. And, I was calling, and so there was an awkward silence where I didn't say nothing. And I wanted to say, "Help." I wanted to say, "Help, please, come, run." But all that came out was, "I'm fine." I don't know where it wasn't me. I couldn't say what I wanted to say. It was almost as if someone was talking for me. And Ed didn't, I guess he didn't bite. He started fishing. And he said to me, "Are you sure? You don't sound all right." And I said it again. I said, "I'm fine. I'm fine." And he went from saying that to, if there's something going on, me and Lorraine will come down to your grandmother's house. We'll come down, kid. That's what he said to me. And he says, again, I said it a third time. I said, I'm fine. And the conversation ended up into a little more small talk. And then he left it. He left it like this. He said, Joey, if you ever feel that you need me and Lorraine, you know we'll come, right? It's so hard for me. And I said, yeah, thank you. And he says, all right, keep in contact. And that was the last time I spoke to Ed. I heard something, and I'm not going to say because of the other party, but that there was actually a little note written on this and put in a folder of me calling him that night. And someone has that. But I had the chance to have them come down, and they would have came down, and they would have brought a priest, and I probably could have got out of this thing a long time ago. But they wouldn't let me. It was, that call haunts me every day of my life.
That's difficult, man. That's really difficult.
You know, people don't realize just how bad it can get, and what this can do to a person's life. And for a long time, I walked around just afraid of being able to interact with everybody. And you know, when I couldn't lick them, I joined them. And I hate to say that, but you know, I was in constant trouble because, you know, of the dependency, and because of the wildness, and because of what happened to me. I was just rebelling against anybody and anything. Just like somebody that gets bullied when they're a kid. A lot of people try to find somebody else that they can bully to make themselves feel a little bit better, or take the edge off of them, so to speak. And I don't mean to use it in a bad way, but that's just how I felt.
Which makes perfect sense. I think that that's understandable from anyone's perspective. You know, this is a lot of this kind of stuff is hard for people to understand. It's hard for me to understand. And I divvy into these stories every single week, and I have for, you know, the last 8 months. So well, and that's exactly why I built these podcasts. You know, I've had my own experience. I know that many of the people that we talk to day in, day out, as far as from this podcast and even the other podcasts from time to time, there's not really a big safe space for a lot of these different people to be able to tell their story, which is why we want to make sure that we provide a platform for anyone and everyone to be able to provide their story if they want to. And for anyone that wants to provide their story, if you go to our website, At the very top, there is a section called Submit Your Story. And much like Joe, you can submit your story. And maybe, just like in this case, we can do your story just the same as we did Joe's.
There's one more thing that I wanted to talk about. And, leading up to that video, throughout the years, I've tried to get documentation. Every time I've grabbed my phone, they stop. Or if I was in the process of hitting record, my phone would get ripped out of my hand and slammed against a wall. I took a picture one time in 1 year. I went through 8 phones. So I basically just gave up on trying to get anything audio or video. So the night that happened, that I was able to get that, was the first time. And when I realized I actually got it, it was a feeling of victory, because now I can show that they're the same ones. They're telling me in the video that they are the same ones, and I now live in Florida. They're telling me, and another person with New England Society for Paranormal Research had told me the same thing. They're basically letting you know they are the same ones. So I had a last battle 4 months ago. I had a stroke at 2:30 in the morning, and they can't come in my house. As far as I know, they can't come in me. I'm heavily protected, and my strength in my spirituality has grown significantly in the past year. But that being said, they were yelling up through my floor vents in my trailer, and I have 6 of them leading from my kitchen into my bedroom through my living room, and they were yelling out of all of them to stop. They just kept Joey. So I'm walking around with holy water, pouring them down my vents at 2:30 in the morning, and I'm screaming back at the top of my lungs at them. And I got my rosary beads, and I'm doing the St. Michael prayer, and I'm doing the Our Father, and in between, probably shouldn't have been, but I was also cussing at them. So I got myself so worked up that I fell out and I had a stroke. I ended up in the hospital for 5 days. My whole right side, for the first 48 hours, I couldn't move. Couldn't move my right arm, my right leg. My speech was very slurred, as if I'd been drinking or something. I just couldn't talk right. They did a lot of physical therapy on me in the first 48 hours. And by the end of the 48 hours, I was actually up and walking around again. But for a minute, I thought they had beat me again, because there was a chance that if I didn't pull out of this, I would have had to go to hospice, because I'm a single man, and I would have been unable to take care of myself. So I would have lost my house. I would have lost my pets. I would have lost everything. So when I say again that for some reason, when the worst things have happened to me in my life because of these demons, something somehow has always come and pulled me out of the worst situations unimaginable. Because I left a lot out of this interview. We have 50 years. There's so many things that I didn't even talk about, but I wanted to make clarification on the things that were said, number one, that weren't true, to expose the lies that were told even back then. That was one of my main objectives with this, is the truth. You're not going to say something else when nobody else is alive to even defend themselves in this. Except me. So I had to do this. When you hear people making up lies about situations that were supposed to happen that never happened, and you have someone that was there that saw something completely different that didn't even pertain to what that person was saying, it makes you mad.
Well, sometimes we got to look at it from a standpoint of, when it comes down to the paranormal, there's a lot of things that's always questionable. But at the end of the day, it all comes down once again to the dark and the light.
Right.
But I want to thank you so much for, if anything, using our platform to provide your story. That means the world to us that you feel comfortable enough to do that.
Well,
and
there was some things in this, in my story that I wanted to leave out, but I felt that even though I had to tone down a lot of it that was graphic, I just wanted the listeners out there, the watchers out there, to know that there's only one way to beat them, and that's to match their strength with that light that you're talking about. You know, when I say that light, I'm talking about that bright light, white light. They don't like it. They do not like the light. So that can be taken a lot of ways, by the way, you know, the light, you know what I'm saying? So,
sure.
But I thought I was going to leave this earth with everything that happened. And for some reason, it worked out that I was able to tell people. So I feel a lot comfortable when my time comes that at least I was able to tell my story and set some things straight.
Joe is currently dealing with some ongoing legal matters, and while we don't delve into the specifics on this podcast, he wants you to know that he's in the process of clearing his name after many years of dealing with this. Now, we respect his journey and appreciate his willingness to share his experience with us despite these challenges. Now, I'm going to tell you all here, I believe at Retraced Echoes in providing a platform that anyone and everyone can share their stories. I don't concern myself with the guest's past. Instead, I'm dedicated to the authenticity and the depths of the stories that they tell. My focus is on the experiences and the narrative that shaped their lives. And if anything, I'm honored to offer a space where their voices can be heard. Now, if you're not ready for the stories to end, you can go over to my other podcast called Deceptive Reality. Every single Friday, we release a new episode. I do it with my co-host. His name is Nick, and we delve into some of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time. So we've covered everything from Mothman, Bigfoot, UFOs. We even throw in from time to time a little true crime. Also, as you can probably assume, some of the greatest hauntings that are also unsolved. And again, we release every single Friday, so you're going to want to check that out. I want to thank you so much for listening. If anything, stay curious, stay vigilant, and until next time, keep your echoes alive. Until I see you next time, goodbye.
In a little house on Lindley Street, a boy named Joey found himself on a tree. Stayed there sometimes in a place so cold, where shadows whispered and stories were told. They said it was just a tale to scare, but Joey knew there were demons there. Objects flew, voices in the walls. In the darkness he heard their calls. Joey, Joey in the haunted house, fighting shadows, trying to get out. To see the haunted boy of Lindley Street. Joey stayed with Laura and Jerry's grace, in a house where fear had found its place. Sam the cat would speak at night, in a voice not his, a terrifying sight. The fridge would float, chairs would fall, in every corner he heard their call. Marcy's friends, they weren't unkind. Joey saw what most would never find. Joey in the haunted house, fighting shadows, trying to get out. And then Lorraine came to see the haunted boy of Lindley Street. Years went by, but the memories stayed. The haunted nights, the games they played. A boy now grown, but the scars were made of Lindley Street and all its pain. Joey's story spread far and wide, of the haunted house and what he tried to hide. But in his eyes the truth is clear, a tale of fear, a child's tear.